Welcome to this deep dive explainer. Today, we're unpacking the Inescapable Voice, navigating failure and grace. We're going to be looking at a profoundly moving personal reflection on human limitation, the crushing weight of our own expectations, and ultimately, the unexpected, overwhelming comfort of God's grace. Look, if you've ever felt like you've just hit a brick wall in your life, your career, or your family, well, this material is absolutely going to resonate with you. We're looking at a piece that strips away all our usual defenses to reveal how we truly handle our own shortcomings, coming from a distinctly Christian perspective. So let's get into it. Okay, let's start with a phrase we literally all use. I did my best. It's our ultimate defense mechanism, isn't it? When we reach the absolute end of our own strength, when we're physically and emotionally just completely depleted, we pull this phrase out, we whisper it to ourselves like a protective mantra. The author of our source text reflects on how many, countless times they've spoken these exact words throughout their life. It's the phrase we use to try and give ourselves permission to finally rest, to tell ourselves that we are enough. We apply this phrase to major life milestones, genuinely believing that if we just pour out our heart and soul, we can justify ourselves and find peace. It happens the moment we hand in that critical exam paper. It happens the second we walk out of the room after a high-stakes job interview. It even happens on deeply personal milestones, like a first Father's Day. We convince ourselves that as long as we've done everything within our human power, we can simply declare, I did my best, and just be completely satisfied. But the author notes that at some point this phrase stops working. It stops being easy to say. Now, what's really fascinating here is how one tiny disruptive word can completely shatter that hard-earned self-comfort. But just as the author manages to convince themselves that they've done enough, just as they're about to grasp that tiny shred of comfort, this little voice quietly interrupts. Yeah, but. And suddenly, they're dragged right back to square one. The peace just evaporates. It's actually wild to think about how easily our fragile, self-made sense of value collapses. Think about that for a second. Why do those two little words, yeah, but, bring us right back to square one? How can they so painstakingly dismantle the value and the worth we fought so hard to build? It feels incredibly unfair, doesn't it? Honestly, it feels like an attack on our very identity. So when that doubt creeps in, our natural human instinct is to frantically list off our efforts to defend ourselves. We're terrified that our sacrifices might not actually count. So we put on this defensive armor. We point to the late nights of studying. We point to the endless, grueling practice sessions we endured for just one career opportunity. We point to the blood, sweat, and tears of raising children. The author asks defensively, are all these things fake? Do they suddenly not count just because of a single but? We try so hard to use our human effort as a shield against that creeping feeling of inadequacy. And right here, we see the agonizing friction between our pride, which tries to cover up our shortcomings, and the undeniable reality of our failures. On one side, we have our self-comforting lie, I've done all I can. But on the other side, the harsh, undeniable reality. The test was still failed. The opportunity was still given to someone else. The kids are still disobedient. The source text points out that facts speak louder than words. That little voice saying but isn't actually trying to destroy us. It's forcing our stubborn, unteachable hearts to finally look at the reality we're desperately trying to avoid. The author uses such a powerful metaphor here. We use our best efforts as a kind of weak glue, literally smearing it over the massive, gaping cracks in our lives, just hoping we don't completely fall to pieces. But human effort was never designed to be the ultimate glue of our existence. When we rely solely on our own works, we're really just temporarily patching up a massive spiritual void. This brings us to a crucial point. When we try to force our own way through failure, we act like a stripped screw. This is one of the most striking visuals in the entire piece. Have you ever tried to tighten a stripped screw? The harder you push, the more force you apply, the more the metal just grinds away and destroys itself. The author realizes that by constantly pushing themselves to just try harder and do more, they aren't fixing the problem at all. They're slowly breaking themselves apart from the inside out. That realization of reality, it's like a harsh, sudden splash of ice water. It painfully, but necessarily, wakes us up from our illusions of self-reliance. It pours right over our passionate illusions and our frantic attempts to save ourselves. It shocks the system. It wakes us up from the self-consoling lies we've been telling ourselves. But here's the thing about being woken up. Once you're awake, you are finally ready to hear the truth. Which leads us to a different voice, the gentle whisper of divine grace. At this point, the author has been brought to the very end of themselves. The self-defense is gone, the illusions are shattered, and right in that moment of absolute vulnerability, a new, incredibly gentle voice enters the picture, and it is completely devoid of the stinging accusation of that previous but. Unlike the harsh reality check of our own failures, this is the gentle, redemptive voice of God directly addressing our absolute limitations with profound grace. The author hears this voice gently ask, "What if you can't get past it? So what?" Just think about how radical that is for a second. Everything in our culture tells us we have to get past it, we have to conquer it, we have to succeed. But this divine voice steps in and says, "What if you simply can't? What if you are fundamentally limited?" And instead of that being a condemnation, it's actually an invitation to grace. This soft voice isn't meant to condemn our failures as a parent or a professional, not at all. It's meant to gently support us at the exact moment we realize we're utterly powerless. The author recognizes this immediately as the voice of God's love. It's a voice that gently holds them up, giving them the courage to finally accept their own powerlessness. They can finally admit, yes, I poured my heart into this. Yes, I loved my kids with everything I had. And yes, I still failed. I'm still helpless. And this realization really captures the core takeaway of this entire explainer. God doesn't ignore the fact that the author tried their absolute best. He sees the love, he sees the effort, but he also sees the undeniable human limitations. The beauty of this Christian framework is that while God absolutely sees the failure, he completely refuses to let that failure be the end of the story. Your failure is not your finale. The author quotes Psalm 34:18 to bring this entire reflection home. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." This deeply moving scripture perfectly cements the truth that our brokenness and our inability to just get past it are exactly what draw God's saving grace closest to us. When our pride is crushed, when that stripped screw can't turn anymore, when our hearts are completely broken by our own inadequacy, that is precisely when God is closest. We don't have to glue ourselves back together before he accepts us. So I want to leave you with this thought today, to encourage you to stop relying on your own exhaustive efforts and completely surrender to his unending grace instead. If God doesn't use failure to end your story, how will you let his grace write the next chapter? We spend so much of our lives frantically trying to prove that our best is good enough. But what if the ultimate freedom is finally admitting that it's not and resting in the grace of a God who loves us perfectly in our failure? If he isn't finished with you yet, how will you let his grace step in where your human effort has run out? Take that question with you today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.